So I'm back, this time to talk about the struggle for Trost, or at least the first two parts of the struggle for Trost. I was excited to finally see the cadets in action, but maybe I shouldn't have been. Because a lot of tragedy struck, the unthinkable happened, and we learned a key character's dark backstory. This arc left me puzzled, it left me in total disbelief, but with some time I think I'm finally starting to process it. So let's get to it. The first thing that kind of caught me off guard is that the battle on the wall really turned out to be simply like an initial skirmish, and that the real battle was in the aftermath. So I was expecting something, I got something different. That's nothing new for Attack on Titan. But the Colossal Titan struck and he damaged the wall, and then he just disappeared. And this really made my jaw drop a little bit, and I got real puzzled because how did he disappear? Like, now I want to know the mechanics of how this Titan disappeared. I want to know what the rules are for these Titans. How do they travel? How does he get there so quickly without anybody seeing him coming? How does he get away so quickly? So I continue to have more questions about these Titans. Basically, how does this guy teleport? And then we get to go see this Lord Wald character. And when we see him, he's playing chess, which is, always kind of been a metaphor in fiction and even in real life about how good someone is at strategy and at planning, specifically both military and politics. And we also see that he's a glutton. He just wipes up all of these crackers with cheese on them or cookies. I'm not sure what they are. The food in anime always makes me hungry. But when you see these things in combination, it really starts to make it clear how the storytellers view the ruling class, or at least how they want to address the ruling class in this show. They essentially show us pretty quickly that Lord Wald, well, he's useless in this new crisis. And it also makes me start to wonder, just thematically, philosophically, aren't most governments built for yesterday instead of tomorrow? And I don't mean this specific, any particular government or political structure, just sort of like human nature. We're always dealing with the last crisis instead of anticipating the next one. So this person was built to be in the ruling class in a world that's very different than what we have faced in the last 5 years here in the Attack on Titan world. Also, Wald makes a comment that only insignificant lives are lost. It shows how detached he's become from the common person. It shows his really self-involved nature and disconnection from humanity at large. And then even the Commandant, this person we got to know in episodes 3 and 4 a little bit, we later find out that even he feels obligated to prop up Wald's ego by losing to him at chess or whatever this board game is on purpose, letting him win or at least giving him a few advantages, taking it easy on him just to keep the water smooth. But then in sort of a watershed moment, we see that the Commandant just swigs wine straight from Wald's bottle. And to me, that kind of works in a real quick instant as a show of kind of the impending change in the social order in this world. The way that people's rank and importance and significance is going to change as we go from peacetime to wartime. And we'll get another example of this in the next episode as well. But there's this flashback, and it's to a classroom, and we see a younger version of some of the characters attending a lesson that's primarily on Titan physiology. And I learn a lot here, because I got so many questions about Titans still. I've gone into this cold. The first thing that caught my attention is they point out that the Titans' method of reproduction is unclear. Almost all the Titans appear to be a male, or at least phenotypically male. They don't really have reproductive organs. I don't like to talk about that stuff, but you know what I mean. They also have this increased body temperature. And that explains why there's steam rising off of them. I really noticed it on the wall when the Colossal Titan attacked. I saw that steam coming off of him, and I thought it was smoke. I thought that was where cannon shots had hit him and he was smoking and they were doing damage. But then later they make it clear through the illustration that because of their increased body temperature, this steam kind of emanates off their body. And it's a great visual effect. It makes them really seem otherworldly and scary and intimidating. But I totally misinterpreted it when I saw it at the beginning of this episode. They also explain that the Titans can regenerate almost, but not quite all injuries. We even saw you can blow a head off and the head will grow back. Blow an arm off and it grows back. The Titan gets blown in half and the upper part of the body's still crawling towards the humans. So they do have this mystical supernatural component. They're not just gigantic animals. There's a little something extra there. And building on this whole otherworldly nature of the Titans, they even disclose that apparently they don't need to eat. And they've arrived at this conclusion because the only thing that Titans eat are humans. They don't eat any other animals, and they hadn't had any contact with humans for like 100 years, and they didn't all starve to death. So apparently they don't need to eat. They don't hurt any animals but humans, and apparently they just eat humans out of pure spite or something. They call it a bloodlust. And this makes it seem like they're designed specifically to kill humans, and then the way that the steam comes off of them, the way that at least the Colossal Titan seems to be able to just evaporate and then reform. It makes me start to wonder in a really weird direction, but like, are these alchemical creations or something? Is there a little bit more of a component to it other than just biology? And then, of course, given how we're seeing this changing social situation, we're seeing an impending crisis on civilization. I've already said this whole show seems to be somewhat of a meditation on how society handles crisis, or how civilizations handle crisis. I start to wonder if these Titans are an allegory for a weapon. You know, it's like an example of humans creating the means of our own destruction. The first thing that comes to mind is that famous Oppenheimer quote, "I am become death, destroyer of worlds," which he was quoting from, I believe, a Hindu text, but that's all that's running through my head when I see this. And we're going to learn that civilization was once spread out, so it's possible that someone would want to create a weapon to use against another population of humans somewhere else, and this weapon sort of backfired and it kills everybody. But with this classroom scene, it's just another example, and I just want to compliment that I like how the basic information continues to drip out rather than just being dumped on us all at once. Back in Trost, we see that Mikasa is assigned to the rear guard, and these rear guard are the elite troops to protect the evacuation, the withdrawal, the retreat, whatever you want to call it, the relocation of the citizenry. But she tries to get out of it. She really tries to downplay her own skill, but everybody knows that Mikasa is like as good as it gets, particularly out of this group of fresh cadets that have recently graduated. And this leads to an interesting confrontation with Eren, where he wants her to snap out of it, to be real, to just do her job. And that just kind of seems strange with the sort of attachment I've seen from him earlier on. And then she tells him to try not to get killed, which seems like unnecessary advice. I would think that's kind of where most people would start from at zero, like your baseline is trying not to get killed. But of course, in the next episode, we're going to find out that Eren's not like most people in that regard. So she has a good reason, and she knows it, to tell him, try not to get killed. We see our young heroes just charge into battle. It's like this epic scene. It really looks at first like some kind of classic comic book, cartoon, you know, take your pick, Spider-Man, G.I. Joe, whatever. They're just charging off into battle, and it looks great, and it looks heroic. They're full of pride and bravery and enthusiasm. And in most shows or stories, this would be where they face sort of a lower level threat in their first outing. They'd show us what they've got as individuals, but they would struggle and either just barely win or have to be rescued by some more experienced soldiers. And then they would come away with that with the realization that they have to learn to work as a team. That would be kind of your typical, stereotypical character development in this moment. But this isn't most shows. They collide with the reality of war right away. They don't even get to complete their valiant charge before tragedy strikes, because in the middle of what I'll call their call to action, a Titan leaps up, kind of like a frog, slams into a tower, and then it's revealed that he has one of the cadets in his mouth. I believe it's Thomas who got chomped. So we got a Thomas chomp here to go along with the mom chomp. And then in what seems like the blink of an eye, you see fallen cadets all around, and I'm still going to call them cadets. I know they're recent grads, but please humor me on this. It just makes the conversation flow more easily. And on a rooftop, we see Eren, and he's been severely wounded. And I've watched this episode twice now, and it really looks like one of his legs is missing below the knee, like he has a below the knee amputation from this fight he's been in. And I experienced a little bit of confusion here. A lot of disbelief had just washed over me. I couldn't quite grasp what I'd just seen. And trust me, a whole lot more of that's yet to come. I thought I must have been mistaken. Like that wasn't really Eren there, because it wouldn't be the first time I've thought that one character was another character where I'm still learning to identify them with their visual cues. But no, I'm pretty sure that was really Eren there with the missing legs, so, or at least below the knee it was missing. Then we see Armin, and he's cowering on a rooftop. He's clearly not ready for the reality of battle. Like earlier, we saw that his hands were shaking very badly when he was trying to connect some canisters together, and it just shows us how he might be theoretically prepared for this, but he is definitely not realistically prepared for this. And then while I'm dealing with just how out of place Armin is and waiting to see his moment to shine, well, then this Titan with a beard shows up, like a big full beard. And the beard on the Titan looks so out of place to me. And then I started asking myself, like, why does this Titan have a beard and none of the rest do? And then I started to wonder, like, was this Titan once a man? And then I started having these crackpot theories come up, and I'll talk more about those in a little bit. But this Titan sets its eyes on Armin, picks him up, throws him down the hatch. Now, I thought this was the worst, most unexpected thing that could happen. I thought I was as emotionally crushed as I could be. I really wanted to see Armin develop, to find his place in this world, to finally get to apply those talents that we know he has. I thought this was absolutely the most incompatible thing with what I expected from this story that could happen, but I was wrong. There was something even more unexpected about to happen here, because Eren jumped into the Titan's mouth and he rescued Armin. A big heroic moment. I was cheering when I saw this. This was triumphant, right? No, wrong, very wrong. It's not triumphant, because now Eren is trapped in this Titan's mouth. I was glued to the screen. I was waiting to see how Eren would escape from this. How's he going to get out of this sticky situation? Because my TV heroes always find a way out of these spots. You know, when I grew up and I was watching shows, I would get a little tense, but I knew in the end the hero was going to find a way out of it. But Eren doesn't. Eren has his blade wedged between the Titan's teeth and there's blood around his eyes, and he gets swallowed. And I experienced some stages of grief. You know, I had like the Kubler-Ross stages. I didn't quite go through all of them, but I could kind of recognize myself going through this in retrospect. First up was disbelief, and I thought, was this a dream sequence? Like, I'm totally in denial. This had to be a dream sequence. This is just like some kind of nightmare, and then Armin's going to wake up and we're going to realize that they haven't even left cadet camp yet. I mean, I was waiting for that. Then I started to go into some bargaining, like saying maybe Eren will cut his way out in the next episode. Maybe he's still going to escape yet. But I have to confess, I still haven't reached acceptance, because I still expect Eren to be saved somehow. Like, I can't let go of that right now. And then the crackpot theories kick in, because like I said, I'm willing to go to any ridiculous length to come up with a way that Eren survives this. And then I started to think, is this how new Titans are made? Because we've already been told that their reproduction is a mystery, so I start to wonder if this is like the werewolf vampire principle. Like, you get bitten by a werewolf, you turn into a werewolf. Same goes for a vampire. Maybe you get chomped by a Titan and you become a Titan. I know that's ridiculous, but I was so desperate here. I was just grasping at any kind of straw I could, because I'm not ready to let go of Eren yet. I mean, earlier I did speculate that Eren was willing to become a monster to fight a monster, but honestly I meant that more metaphorically, not quite like he would literally become a monster, at least not in this way. But like I said, I really don't know. I'm just trying anything to not have to let go of Eren's character yet. When episode 6 starts, Armin is understandably despondent, and when he jumps off the roof near the beginning of that episode, I forgot about his OMD. Like, I thought he was trying to hurt himself. I thought he was trying to say goodbye, cruel world, and he leaped off, and I was a little shocked there. But then, of course, the cables kick in, and his mobility device sends him flying through the sky across the town. We see that this character, Franz, has fallen. In fact, I think he may have been ripped in half. And then Hana, another character, is not willing to let go of Franz yet. Like, she's performing CPR, and we know it's totally fruitless, but she just can't accept the fact that this person has died. And maybe that's kind of like me with Eren. Maybe this show is anticipating how I'm reacting, and it's showing me something to say, look, you've got to accept this. These consequences are real. And sort of a contrast, we see that Potato Girl seems to be handling all of this remarkably well. And this keeps me intrigued, because I want to know what in the heck is going on inside that head of hers. Then we see Armin sort of have a contemplation on the cruel nature of life. And that's a theme that's going to be repeated later on in the episode, but from a different perspective and with a different conclusion. We also see that Mikasa is a Titan killing machine. I mean, she's hacked so many of the Titans that her blades have become dulled. And also, we will find out where this killer instinct comes from as this episode unfolds. But first, she confronts a merchant who values property more than human life. And I love how this show gives us echoes. And we're going to get an echo of Armin's contemplation. Here we're getting an echo in episode 6 of that character of Lord Wald in episode 5 with this merchant who values property more than human life. And we see Mikasa confronts him, she threatens him, and suddenly human life is worth more than property when it's his life that's being dealt with. And she opens up the passageway and more refugees can evacuate from Trost. I see this encounter and I think that it's maybe a sign that the economy is set to crumble in this crisis. And I kind of call this the Gilligan's Island principle. I don't know how familiar you are with Gilligan's Island, but I figure most people are. And like Mr. Howell is this millionaire, he has lots and lots of dollars, and he's always offering to pay people huge sums of money to do things. But on this island, there's not like any commerce, so the money really is worthless. So Mr. Howell, his whole means of power and survival before he gets to the island is suddenly gone when everything is built by coconuts and nobody really has a use for dollars. But people still hold on to that concept of money for a while, so it still does manage to persuade people at times. And then also this property that he's trying to transport out of Trost. What if this is food or grain or fodder for livestock? Like, I don't know exactly what his cargo is, but we do have this increasing population density. And if that's food, well, that could be a difficult philosophical debate. Now, I don't mean a real debate, because in real world, if you're there in front of you, you're going to save that life you're looking at instead of thinking on down the road. At least most people would. I know I would. But the philosophical debate comes up where would it be better to die by Titan and maybe die quickly, or to die slowly by starvation? And maybe even more people will be affected if the food doesn't get through than if the people don't get through. Once again, just a philosophical question that I think the show might subtly be hiding underneath all this plot. I know where I stand. I would pick the people in front of me every time, but still, it's the kind of debate people have when they're talking about philosophy and principles and stuff like that, economics. But we do get to see Mikasa'S backstory, and I'll call it her origin story if you'll allow it, just easier for me conversationally. But the first thing that caught my attention is that her family lives in a cabin in the woods. And I feel like putting her family in this cabin, I mean, it's necessary for the story to unfold as it does, but also it's a good, quick, effective way to just show how the ratio was so much more favorable back then, the ratio of population to land, that is, because they're not all densely packed together like we'll see them in the cities that get attacked later in the series. This is a few years back, and we've got these folks in cabins that live mostly a solitary existence, something we are not going to see at all now that outposts are starting to fall and people are withdrawing to the inner walls. Eren and his father are going to Mikasa''s cabin for a checkup because Eren's father is a doctor. I guess he's an actual medical doctor. I thought maybe he was just sort of an abstract scientist, but it looks here like no, he's a medical doctor. And I think this is set to be Eren and Mikasa''s first meeting, but it goes awry in a major way because they discover that Mikasa''s parents are slaughtered. And there's this horrible, horrible crime scene with dead bodies and blood, and it is so disgusting. And we see that Mikasa is missing, and this really sets a dark, scary tone for Mikasa''s mid to early childhood. And then what happens here shows us some personalities in a snapshot. Grisha, the father, immediately goes to get the police, but Eren goes to get revenge. And I know he says it's a rescue mission to rescue Mikasa, but I really think he's more motivated by the idea of vigilante justice than simply rescue, because there are other ways to do this rescue. And this, like in a nutshell, shows so much of Eren's character and how his mechanism of operation has been present since a pretty early stage in his life. It makes me wonder if like part of his brain is missing, like the part that understands it's a low probability of success when one child takes on multiple armed adults. And we see Mikasa in the hands of human traffickers. And if you had any doubts about just how dark this show's willing to go, you can put those to rest with this horrific event because, You know, I watched a lot of cartoons over the years, and very few deal with human trafficking, particularly of a child. And we also learn a little bit more about this world that we're living in Attack on Titan. We find out that Mikasa is considered exotic, that her mother's from the Far East, or at least she's descended from people from the Far East. And this kind of explains just how widespread this tragedy is. It shows that maybe this really is the only human settlement, at least on all of this supercontinent that I'm assuming is equivalent to Eurasia. Because in my mind, I keep thinking, are there other outposts of humans they're going to run into, sort of Walking Dead style? They're always finding encampments of humans on that. But I'm thinking if this person has come from the very far east to the very far west, probably this is it. But Eren arrives on the scene, and he just goes straight to stabbing. I mean, there's no hesitation, there's no remorse, and more concerning to me, there's no fear. So I think it's this attitude that's really what led him to get chomped in episode 5. And after seeing this, I'm surprised he even made it this far with his level of reckless courage. And then a key moment for Mikasa happens, when Eren gets ambushed and he calls on the cowering Mikasa to take action. So she meditates on the predator and prey concept that she's seen in the world, and this is kind of an echo of sorts of Armin's earlier contemplation. But it's from a different perspective and she reaches a different conclusion. She identifies suddenly more with the predator than the prey, which is the opposite of what we see through Armin's eyes and mind. But in this moment, a mighty warrior is born when Mikasa rushes to the kidnapper and she plants the knife through his back and directly into his heart. Back in Trost, a soldier calls for Mikasa to go up to the wall and to evacuate, but she turns down that chance at freedom and she leaves to go help the Vanguard and to continue slaughtering Titans. And then in kind of a final moment, she concludes that even in these harsh conditions, she has a family and that with Eren, she can do anything. So this last statement, like, what does it mean? And what does it tell us? And how is Mikasa going to react when she finds out Eren has been eaten by a Titan? Like, is she just totally going to go rogue? Is she going to go off? Is she going to leave the walls? Is she suddenly going to detach herself from everything? Is she going to lose her own will to fight? Or is she going to try to do some crazy rescue mission? I don't know what's going to happen here, but I'm super curious. And being super curious, I'm in a hurry to go ahead and watch episodes 7 and 8, so I'm just going to stop it here. I think I've rambled on a little too long as it is. Thanks for watching. I'll talk to you soon.